everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem, and finally we are back for our second Cave Discoveries video, and this was from the drawing inks that we looked at, and it was quite some time ago. Apologies for that, but we're here now, we got there. So I really liked this comment that was left under the first video, and it really inspired me to think about doing something along these lines, because I've recently finished playing a video game called Planet Crafter, and basically you land on an uninhabitable planet and it's up to you to make it habitable. So I kind of wanted to pull that in and use that as my inspiration. So it started off in my sketchbook here, and you can see I did a wee thumbnail up in the corner there just to decide what type of landscape. So very barren, very desolate. In order to add some interest, I wanted to have some sort of slightly funky looking structures that you probably wouldn't find on Earth, because that's what's going to add interest to this picture if there's actually not a lot of content in the finished picture. So you can see I'm trying out lots of different shapes there. I've really taken by these kind of circular ones, and that's what I sort of decided on. So doing a slightly bigger thumbnail here as well, just to kind of pencil in a bit more detail and get an idea of what I was going to do for colour before I start using the inks. This is really important because I'm not that confident with drawing inks and it's all very permanent. So this was a really good first step for me before I committed any ink to the paper. So to get myself started here on what will be the final image, I have a sheet of the Pencil March watercolour paper. It is the expert grade paper, so it's 50% cotton. This is really affordable. It's quite a thick pad as well, 300 GSM, and I'm really enjoying using this, and specifically as this is something that I'm not really sure how it's going to turn out because drawing inks aren't my thing. This is a great risk-free way of not wasting your more expensive papers or whatever. The first thing I want to do is draw out one of the designs that I did in my sketchbook and just get some very light lines down. I'm using an F pencil, so very light lines that we can erase or they won't show through too much. I haven't really decided how much outlining I'm going to do with the various speedball nibs, etc. So keep the pencil lines light to cover any eventuality. So I'm going to start by popping in some of these sort of weird structures that I had here. I had a bit of an accident with some alcohol ink there. But yes, so some of these that I've looked through, I kind of like this idea. It reminds me of a cake stand that you would see at like an afternoon tea or something. So I quite like this one, but I'm also quite fond of this one as well. So I might use a combination of these just to give that sort of slightly eerie feel. But for now, I just want to have placement. So I'm just going to basically draw a couple of knobbles here. So I want to leave quite a lot of space for the sky because we want it to be twilight. I want it to be very dark at the top. And my thinking there was we could maybe mix some of the Indian ink, maybe some of this beautiful black blue pelican ink that we've got as well, but also this little one that came with the dip pen that's got the sparkly stuff in it, that might do for some nice stars across the top as well. So I do kind of want the sky to be a bit of a feature, but not for it to be the sort of sole focus. I want this to be quite an interesting picture. I think it's going to be interesting whatever we do, but I mean interesting in a good way. So I've got some very light basic shapes down here, but now I'm going to start to pad out these rock structures that I was talking about. It looks a little bit like a wonky Christmas tree, but not mad about it at all. So this one here is right in the foreground, so this is the one that I'll probably have the most detail on, but I'm kind of feeling that I maybe want to do that with the dip pens or some of the speedball nibs. That's one of those things we can tweak as we go along. We don't have to have every single detail down at this point. Most of you will know by now that I'm quite sort of go with the flow with things like that, which is the complete opposite to my personality. Really what I'm trying to achieve just now is this outline, and it's so that I can put the background colours down. You'll be able to see better now that I've zoomed in a little bit, but I've actually split this into three very rough, I can't call them thirds, they're not thirds, but I've got this foreground line here, and then I've got this mid-ground line as well, so that's really the horizon there, and then obviously this top part's the sky. I've added interest just by having a little bit of elevation at one side. If this is completely flat, then it's just not quite as exciting perhaps. That's better. You can actually see some of my pencil lines now. So I want to focus on this sky area first. So when I think about twilight, that refers to the fact that the sun is below the horizon, but there might still be a little bit of light here, just poking up above. So I don't know how much I want to complicate things for myself. We're gonna go for it. I might use the white of the paper to my advantage for that. I shall wait and see. For this background, I'm thinking like more of a painterly fashion here. So I'm just grabbing me a pipette, and I've got this really cute little palette here. This was made for me by Julia of Julia K Art Studios, and I think it's just perfect for this because I've got quite a nice surface area. So I've got that slightly off to the side. Pencil now. So I'm just going to pop some of this in here. I did think about doing this wet and wet, but I don't think that's the best idea. I think I want to try and embrace the sort of the intensity of ink in general and try not to sort of revert to form, which may or may not be an easy thing for me. We're about to find out. Here we go. So just get this down first. Now this is one of the advantages of using watercolour paper. We can layer this up as much as we want without worrying too much about how the paper's going to cope with it, because the paper's going to cope fine with it. So I was quite generous there with the lay down, but it's so that I can pull this down to the edge of my horizon here. So we're going to be layering this up, so I'm not too worried about getting a nice smooth texture, or a smooth finish should I say. And then as I come down, I just want to add a little bit of water, so I'm just dipping that flat brush in water and then adding that to my palette. That's just out of shot. So I now have a slightly diluted version. With this diluted variation, I'm just going to start bringing that down. Not clean off my brush, but again add more water. So this is becoming paler and paler as it's going down to the horizon here. And this is obviously to help give the idea that there's still light coming up. One of the things I really like to do with stuff like this, and I do it with paint all the time, is just wait and see how it dries and then kind of like work with the marks that are left behind and really sort of build on them. So this corner is going to be much, much, much darker than this one. Maybe the moon's coming from this direction, so we could have a bigger concentration of stars here, like sprinkles of the shimmery ink. But also if this does end up drying and we stick to that theory, when it comes to these structures here, it means I can put a cast shadow in this direction and it would kind of all make sense. So there's lots of things you can do, and there's lots of ways that you can sort of tell a story just by letting things like ink do what they want to do. And I kind of like that as well. So we'll wait and see what happens. We'll just give this some time to dry. Okay, so I'm adding in this black with the shimmer now. And hopefully you can see that shimmer there. And just as I talked about, I'm going with the textures that have been left behind with my first layer. And I'm kind of making those into sort of like cloud formations. That gives us a little bit of interest in the sky here. And lets us find a balance between something that's fantasy and something that's believable. I kind of struggle with it a little bit because I always feel like, the sky should be blue, the grass should be green. And I have no problem when anyone else does it. Like, it's not a thing for me. But it's just when I'm painting, I always feel like things should be their colours in real life. So I'm trying to get past that. But I think this idea that the moon's maybe higher up or over here is sitting quite well with me. So I want to let this dry completely now. You can really see that shimmer coming out in that black ink there. That was the little inks that came with the dip pen. So these are completely and utterly not waterproof at all. So once this layer has dried, I'm going to spray this with some workable fixative, and it's more to protect it than anything else. I won't be putting too much more on top of that as it is. I'm just going to leave that to dry, and that will be sort of what the finished sky looks like. It's more a case of when I'm working with water and other things down here, if I get any splashes or whatever, it won't disturb this. Alright, so we're dried off now, and you can see that gold has just popped out. It's crazy. I was not expecting that. I've got some little dots here and there, but it's all good. Why not? So I've just given this a wee bit of scoosh with some workable fixative. This is the one that I use. It's the Winsor & Newton one. The reason I use this is it's easy to get a hold of in the UK. It's readily available and it can last ages. If you are going to contemplate something like this, there is a really, really strong smell off of it. It's really, really stormy here today, so I had to do it in the doorway of my utility room. Okie dokie, so now I want to get the base layer down for the rest of this picture now and to make it, start to look a bit like a picture. So for the landscape, I'm thinking like a red rock or like a browny reddy rock. So we've got this really offensive orange drawing ink and I think we can maybe mix something up to get the kind of shade I'm looking for. I was also thinking about maybe mixing it with a little bit of this nut brown from Winsor and Newton. So we'll get this going in here and have that fading out as it meets this area. Maybe add a tiny drop of water there down to that foreground line that I talked about earlier. So I'm getting this sort of slightly desolate feel. I knew this was going to happen. I wasn't expecting it to happen quite so soon. I've just dropped the orange ink and it's splattered everywhere, so I'll just try and work that in as best I can. The beauty of this is it's very soluble, so at least we can... I've got a bit in the water though, that's not helpful. At least we can work with this a little bit. Okay, so a bit stronger here at the front, in the foreground. Again, I'm just going to grab some water on that brush. Get some shapes there in front of this structure. I don't know what else to call them, just structures. So I want to think a wee bit about light source. Obviously there's this little bit here which is going to have a little bit of a highlight. I'm not really thinking about highlights, I'm thinking more about low lights. I think I want to stick with this nut brown colour, which has got a sort of purpley hue to it, and I want to use that because I want to incorporate purple into this river here as well. So maybe start to get some shadow in. I think I'm going to use a much smaller brush for this. I'm going to use a weenie brush, or at least one with a very small point on it. Here's a Van Gogh brush. Look at the state of my hands. Bits and pieces on the go in here. I feel like this one over here would be quite dark. And maybe a wee bit of cast shadow as well. So let's put a little bit in there to really get that idea that there is some light going on here. Okay, so now for these formations that are in the foreground. So this is just the neat nut brown now. I want to start here with these sort of platform parts. These almost looks like some sort of mushrooms, don't they? It's quite exciting. I'm going to leave this middle one just now because there's an overlap and I don't want that bleeding into it. So I'll start on this bottom one here and I'll come back. Make sure I've got this sort of rugged edge on the go. I think I will probably add in some accents and embellishments with black ink. Maybe not full on, like outlining. I think that might kind of take away from it, but I might add in a little bit here and there just to sort of make things pop out a little bit. Yeah, I think this one's dry enough now, so I'm just going to head back over here. Okay, so while we're waiting for that part to dry, I am going to grab this violet ink. So this is the Artful ink, and this is going to form the basis of our river. So we're going to build this up in layers to give it like a watery feel. And the great thing about it is being acrylic, once it's dry, we can't shift the layer underneath. So I'm going to use that to my advantage here as well. So I've got it in neat form here, and in the well next to it, I'm going to have a slightly diluted version, or a very diluted version as this first round will be. Just testing this out in the bottom here. So I've actually got sections here. So I'm going to have that as the middle section. I'm going to try and keep the flow going here as well because I want this to have a slightly smoother feel. Section here. And again, just adding some water as it gets closer to what is this light source. So I feel like that's giving us a nice transition, but this is too pale down here, so again, just going to add in a little bit more while I can. Okay, so I've got this, the orange drawing ink, this one here, and I'm using that more or less neat, and that is going to form the basis of the rest of our formations here. So this is quite intense. I do love an offensive orange. Just taking my time here. I'm not too fussy about these edges because I know that I'm going to go in with my dip pen or one of my drawing nibs and we'll really cut out and define some of these lines. Obviously I'm still trying to be a wee bit careful, but I'm not right bothered if things are a little bit off. Just avoiding that middle section just now until I get the nut brown down in that little section that was being overlapped there. This is sort of quite witch's hat, this section here. Okay, we're starting to look like something now. Okay, so while this little patch here is drying, I'm going back to my river. Look at this colour, it's just amazing. So this is the same colour, just undiluted obviously. Okay, it's at this point here that I'm going to start adding the diluted version. I feel like this needs to go this way a bit more. Get back in this orange now. Try not to put my hand in that, that would be great. Okay, so we are mostly dry now. Yes, we're all dry. So I want to just add in some more shadows and things, and then I'm going to put in some details in the foreground. So for example, in under here. So just starting to add in some detail here at the front of the painting picture, and this is just the orange mixed with a tiny bit of Indian ink, so get some shadows in, and I kind of want this whole area in here to be darker, and I want to start beefing up these platforms with the nut brown. So I've mixed up some some yellow here with a tiny little bit of India ink in it as well. You can see it's giving me this sort of khaki colour. And I'm going to use this for a little bit of brush type greenery, maybe around some of these edges, and maybe we can have some sort of bush or something growing here. And then, oh, that's a bit much. And then we can maybe follow some of these lines as well. That's why I like to leave myself these sort of brush marks, because I can use them to my advantage later on. So really I've got this like real sort of desolate feel going on here, which I really like. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my dip pen. So this is the Speedball 56 nib, and this is where we really get going. So basically everything in the foreground now I want to bring out and want to put a little bit more detail in, because I feel like that's the sort of bulk of it done in terms of colour. So really sharpen up these details, especially on these weird rocky planty structure things. Just maybe accentuate some of these other textures and lines that I've put in. I don't want these lines to stand out per se. I still want to have, you know, a sort of painterly feel to it, but I feel like some of these details need to be a bit more detail-y, for want of a better phrase. So make sure there's a really deep shadow under there, the hatching in under there. And then accentuate some of these lines from my brush strokes. So you can see there's enough there to give it a little bit of definition if we compare this one to that one. But it's not, you know, it's not like jumping up and punching you in the face. You know, it doesn't look too out of place, which is kind of what we want. And let's do this other one on the other side. And there we go. So quite happy with that. Moving on to my river now. I want to give this a bit more of a solid line. And then as we come up here, just a little more of an accent rather than anything ridiculous going on. And the same in this area here. And then I can start to just add in some little lines here. I have to say these dip pens are pretty good for this, because you can get some really nice delicate lines. Obviously, I mean, you can achieve the same thing with a fine liner, but it's a little bit more fun with the dip pen. And I just want to add in a little bit of hatching in here as well underneath this Okay, I feel like I still have something missing here, and I feel it should be like a cactus or a tree or something, and I'm going to plonk it in this little open space here. So I'm going to take this sort of yellowish greenish colour from before, and let's just see where this takes me. Well, looks like a tree to me. However, I'm going to grab some of this violet colour again. Maybe this is some sort of fruit that grows. Maybe it's the only sustenance one would get if one were to appear and try to inhabit this very bleak and hostile environment. I feel like I want some darker areas in this water here, perhaps right at the edge. So I'm going to take that black sparkly paint from before that we used up here. So we're going to get a little bit of shimmer in our water. My other thought that maybe this is like an acid rainstorm that's coming in. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Right, okay, I'm going to stop there, guys. I've had really good fun with this. Not obviously, ink's not something I would normally play with. I've really enjoyed doing this for some weird reason. If anybody has any ideas for a story that might go with this, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is very much inspired by the computer game that I've been playing recently. But if anybody's got any other theories, I would love to hear it. So let's get this out of the tape and see what it looks like on its own. That gold in the corner, that's ridiculous. And there we have it, everyone. A fantasy landscape with some sort of strange version of Twilight and maybe a glitter bomb acid rain cloud. I've had such good fun with this. I've really enjoyed myself. I don't think the drawing inks is something that I would want to take up on a regular basis. That's really not my thing. This doesn't sit well with me. But this has been incredibly good fun. So I hope you've enjoyed yourself today too. And I'm glad we finally got our first Cave Discoveries art supply up and going. I will be doing another one in the new year. I do feel as well that with these drawing inks, I'm going to put them into the stash shop into the new year as well, because it's something that although it's been fun, I don't think I would go back to using on a regular basis. So if it's something you want to try or you're really into inks, you can keep your eyes peeled for them into January. And I'm sure some of you will make a better job of using them as well. So that's it for today, guys. I want to thank you very much for watching. Thanks for coming and hanging out. And I will see you back in the cave really soon for some festive fun for a mini cave miss. So have a great day, everyone. And bye-bye for now.